Hello, friends, and welcome to your Daily Detroit. It is Monday, May 23rd, 2022, and it's Monday, which means we're having wall-to-wall DCFC talk. And when we talk DCFC, of course, it's Fletcher Sharpe. How are you, sir?
I wish it wasn't as rainy and cold. I mean, 61 degrees is like fine, but compared to what it could be, I'm a little bit let down.
Before we get started, I wanted to mention quickly, happy birthday to Detroit-born comedian Tim Robinson, a favorite of both of ours.
I'm glad he's finally getting his dues. He's in the new Chip and Dale movie as Ugly Sonic, and he's playing the role as only Tim Robinson could do. So happy birthday to him. Hopefully he hears this, and, you know, I would love a part on I Think You Should Leave Season 3.
Let's get into the soccer action. Detroit City FC beat Atlanta 3-1 at Keyworth. It was a match that it was clear that you had basically veterans versus kids, and Atlanta just looked like its stuff was unplugged and frazzled. And
yes and no. Atlanta is a team that very obviously needs to be in MLS next. No disrespect to them, but like they have a team full of people who would like to win, but have not like hit the level of professionalism where it's like we understand how to put games away. It's we just out talent people. And for teams like Atlanta or New York Red Bull 2 or even Loudoun, you can't out talent every single team. Eventually, sometimes you have to just take your foot off the gas and go into the corner and hold the ball up. As we've seen through the games with all these MLS next bound teams, they just aren't there yet. Whatever you do against them kind of has to be taken with a grain of salt, because while they are professional players, it's like some of them are between the ages of 15 to 18. One concern I had with Detroit was set-piece defending. Nelson Orji, center back for Atlanta, on their lone goal, just overleapt everyone and just headed the ball into the net.
Respect to him for that. He took that goal out of the air.
You don't want to see goals given up anyways, but like you don't want to see goals where it's like we scheme this and someone's like, nah, and just literally goes over everything you have and just undoes it. Those are better than the ones where people are left wide open, but still not great to be outleapt by an 18-year-old. Putting extra pressure on Nate when you don't really need to do that is something you want to try to avoid, especially in games where goal differential could potentially matter down the road, as it is kind of mattering right now in the standings. Detroit currently sits tied with Louisville for second place. Technically, that makes them third on goal differential. But offensively, they move the ball really well, kind of toying with the back line a bit. The first goal was especially a thing of that. Stephen Carroll had a nice long ball down the middle of the field to Declan Wynn. If you were paying attention, you kind of notice the forwards kind of take a few steps up to take this defense with them, and as a result, Declan Wynn was able to kind of go right behind them and run right down the side of the field to cut into the middle and get the ball. And he got into the box, saw Pato, who all he had to do was just stick his foot out and just got it into the net. So, again, really good to see him, Pato, scoring goals, because as people who listened heard earlier on, I was a little bit more critical of him putting the ball in the net. So to see him do that consistently now is like really helpful, because it frees up the middle of the field to let our midfield players and the wing players attack more and not be the focal points of the attack. Because for a while, the focal point was Maxi Rodriguez. And not to say that he's not the most important player. He is, but he should not be the one putting the ball in the net all the time for your club.
I am interested to see the unfolding of what I'm calling it the Homino Show, because he's really proving to be a critical player, in the attack.
Yeah, he is having, I don't want to say a career year yet, but in terms of goals and assists, he's in the top 10 in the league. And I think this is one of the few times in a while where he's actually been a starter. Like, I know from a lot of clubs, he was like an impact player off the bench who's will give you an excellent 30 minutes near the end. Maybe he'll start a cup game if need be, but he never was like the guy who was like out there to start. I know for Louisville for sure, he was not the guy to start, but he was always an impact sub. That's really great. That's like MVP-esque type of numbers. And I'm not saying that just because we are following a Detroit team, but typically if you're an attacking player and you can be near the top in goals and assists, it means you are very important to your team and you are one of the reasons why they're doing what they're doing. And with Maxi and Homino, it's exactly what it is.
Now, we would get into more. We would get into the upcoming match against Pittsburgh, but that is 2 weeks away. Before we get into these questions, because that's what's next, we're going to have a bunch of questions from listeners that we got on a variety of things about the team. How important is this 2-week break?
Really great. Brad is still out. Brad Dunwell still with an injury. It's good to see him at the game, walking around. I don't know if he's ready to play yet, but 2 weeks will give him time to like get ready to play if he's close enough. Matty Lewis is also still out. He's in a boot. He's in a boot with a walking scooter, so he's still gone for some time. But you'd rather have the time that he's gone be when you're not playing games versus when you are playing games. So this 2-week break will hopefully cut into Matty Lewis's recovery time. Not likely, but maybe we'll get lucky, and at the end of it, he'll be ready to go. Maybe give some time off the bench. Probably not, but again, could be lucky. But it's great because hopefully at the end of it, Brad will be ready to suit up and take his place back in the starting lineup, which
he's been missing.
They kind of need.
Especially with the schedule getting tougher as we go forward.
Definitely. Not even the congestion of it, but more so just they're going to be playing teams that you can't afford to make mistakes in the middle that they've been making in the middle. So it'll be a good chance for them to refresh, reset, and kind of go from there.
All right, let's get into a bunch of listener questions. Let's start with Jeremy. What position would an upgrade best help the men's team for the second half?
On the wings for sure, because it would definitely keep Michael Bryant in the middle. And not to say that he's not versatile. He's been really great. Awesome. He's been able to play in the wing, in the center, on defense. But he's really shown to strive in the middle. He's like really great in the middle. So probably keep him in the middle. Also, the fact you have 2 wing players right now in Rhys Williams and Declan Wynn, and that's it. You have a backup center back, only one. You probably could use a few more. You have a few backup forwards, sure. Maybe a few backup midfielders, okay. You have no backup wing players, so Declan and Rhys have to be healthy for the entire season until they get backups, because if one of them gets hurt, it's going to be a very big problem. It's going to pull everyone out of position to fill in that hole. Look for a wing back, whether it's on the left or the right.
Linda, you said we have open slots in a past show. If you're a GM, do you have any specific players you'd want us to go get?
I mean, I'm more of like a home ties type of guy where it's like, well, who can we get that is good, but also people in the state would be like, oh, I know this guy. He did whatever. So a big guy for me would be Russell Cicerone, who has never played for Detroit. He's played against Detroit multiple times with FC Buffalo, Michigan Bucks, and recently with the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. Even when he played for FC Cincinnati. Talented, he's quick up top. Probably will not be let go by Pittsburgh. He's been playing great the past 2 years. I looked at 2 forwards, actually. Well, 1 forward, 1 midfielder, who are both playing well currently, so probably not a good chance to let go. But one being former forward Sean-Claude Lawson, who's with Simcoe Rovers. Currently second in the league in goals with 4. He had a brace recently, which is 2 goals to put him up into second place. I think he'd be able to help the firepower. Other player I looked at, a lot of people might not have seen him who listened to the show. Some might have. You probably hear the reference a lot from Neil Rule. It kind of sparked his whole of course catchphrase, which everyone knows and loves. Tyrone Mondy, who played in 2017 against AFC Ann Arbor. Tyrone Mondy with the left foot. He currently signed a contract to Real Monarchs, which is the MLS next team of Real Salt Lake. I'm sorry, I hate saying Real Salt Lake and Real because it's not Spanish. It's Spanish English. It's Spanglish. It's so strange. But yeah, they signed a contract there. He's like kind of a veteran leadership for the club. So I don't know if they're going to let him go. But also contracts at the second level are kind of weird. So I'm sure if they showed him enough money and said, we really want you to come back, I'm sure he'd probably appreciate playing in front of fans more so than playing in front of a few scouts in especially being in Utah. I'm sure being in Michigan is a much bigger upgrade than being in Utah. I can say that without a doubt. If I'm looking at names, maybe some players that people know already just to kind of build some more excitement. Kind of like when Francis Atuahene signed to the team, people were like, I watched him at Michigan. I know that guy. He's pretty great.
Where in the world is Cyrus Sadie?
I mean, well,
like, let's get out like the picture book.
There have been a few players who played for Detroit who are around, and I'm not going to use names because I don't know if the club is with them yet, but like they are around, like they are with the players at training sessions. They are with the players on game day. They are like next to the bench during the game, but they're in street clothes the entire time in street clothes and they're not rostered. So I'm like, I don't know what you're doing in street clothes for a third of a season, just in street clothes, but you're training with them. So I don't know what's happening here, but yeah, it's kind of goofy, man. Like something's up there. So yeah, I can't really speak on Cyrus. I know he's not one of the people who's like publicly there, but like he's like around still. So I'm a little. I don't know if his career is done, but like I don't know if it's like still going. It's very much a weird limbo space, if you will.
All right, Justin has a couple of points. My biggest concern is how we are going to hold on to Trevor James, Rhys, and some of the other top players in the offseason. Now, I want to make a note here as from a reporting point of view. It's kind of maddening to me, and I know you got a lot of thoughts on this, but it's kind of maddening to me that the contract terms and such aren't as available as they are in other pro leagues. So it's very difficult to kind of forecast or know where people are at. Like, I'm used to covering things where it's like, oh, so-and-so signed for $1.2 million over 3 years, right? I'm used to being able to like work like that. And as somebody who isn't as experienced with this league, it's been a difficult thing for me to transition and try to like forecast things because that information just isn't there.
I mean, I know it lends a point we were talking earlier in the season where you were like, this team's roster is like worth X amount from contracts. And I'm like, that doesn't mean much because we don't know how much these like teams we don't know how much money is actually inside of there because they don't publicly put out most contracts.
That's not just a DCFC thing.
They just don't have to. And some teams do, but most teams are like, we signed this player. It's how much? We signed him. He's on our roster. Don't ask any more questions. Like even the trade with Birmingham where Detroit got Mackie Jope from that. People are like, well, what'd they give up? Something. They gave up something. Things. And now whatever the something we had is now theirs and we have a player. So yay. And that's just going to be what it is. But to answer his question, and I'm saying this with like the biggest amount of respect for Trevor James. He's not going anywhere. He's the GM of the team, as well as being the head coach. He would be foolish to go somewhere else where he doesn't have total control. That would just be absolutely not smart. And he strikes me as someone who would not do that. To the players, and again, greatest amount of respect for the players. They've all come to the community, done really great things. They've embraced the thing well. You can go and buy that jersey for Devin Amoo-Mensah or for Rhys Williams or for Stephen Carroll because they're going to be here next year. And it's not because talent-wise, but like, no MLS team is shelling out that much money for one of those players right now. You're not going to look up and see Pato playing for Columbus or Maxi playing for Austin FC. It'd be great for them. I'm sure if one of the teams offered money, you'd be dumb to say no. Like that's a bunch of money that probably could go into signing a few more players.
I mean, you have a short career. You've got to take every opportunity you have. But I think you should kind of lay it out in more soccer terms, like why that's not the case.
Even with as great of scouting as the American soccer has now, like they're getting better. Before it was bad. Like you could find so many awesome players like Kwedo Poku, who played for a while just non-league soccer everywhere. And then he popped up randomly with New York City FC. And then he kind of had a career with them just playing. He literally came off the street. Like they're like, where's this guy from? And he made his way to an MLS side. Then he played for the Rowdies for a minute, for Miami for a minute. Now he's currently playing in Gibraltar, I think. Last he was seen was in Gibraltar. So yeah. But with as good a scouting as there is in the country, especially like in this state and getting better in the region, if these players that like are playing so well for 1 year, just 1 year in the championship, were that super, super well, they'd already be in the championship getting looked at for the MLS. There are so many players in the championship, like Solomon Asante, Cameron Lancaster, Aaron Malloy, Trey Muse, who are really talented players who've been in the league for quite some time, maybe not some of them longer than others, not a sniff from the Major League Soccer teams. So like if you're worried about them leaving to go there, that's not the case at all. Maybe to a different team, different network, maybe. But I also don't see any player leaving this team to go to a different team because most of them have shown they truly love this club and what the club's about. So I'm not worried about that at all.
As somebody who comes from covering other sports, the tier system in soccer is very different. So many people say, oh, well, Detroit, it's like the Mud Hens, the MLB. That's not the case. Like, it doesn't work like that. Like, these teams, like, that's why we're talking about MLS next. Like, the MLS teams have their own development squads and their own pipelines. This is not like baseball. It doesn't work like that.
And they even have those MLS next teams. They don't even use half those kids. Most of those kids play for those clubs for like 3-4 years, and they end up having to go do something else because they weren't picked up. Because most MLS sides, if they're looking to sign players, are looking at like Europe. They're like, oh, this guy played for Galatasaray 4 years ago, and he's been sitting around making donuts for 2 years. Yeah, but he played for Galatasaray in Turkey, so we want him anyways. Like, we don't care. We'll take him over whatever. The amount of players you see drafted in the MLS Super Draft who like won numerous accolades in college, who don't make MLS rosters is like mind bending. A few years ago, there was a player who won the Herman Trophy, which is like the Heisman for college soccer, best male athlete in soccer. He won that. He won best defender and won something else. Got drafted like number 6 overall from out of Stanford. Did not make the MLS roster, and I don't know where he is right now. And I'm like, that's nuts, because he was one of the best players by far in the country, and he's now, I think, a USL Championship League 1 type player.
So lightning could strike, but lightning also is really rare.
I'll put it like this, and I need to make sure I have the money to back this up. If Devin Amoo-Mensah or Rhys or Stephen Carroll or any one of the main players have been moved up to the next level next year, I will donate to someone's charity. We'll pick an amount that I can afford, but I'll donate to someone's charity for sure. And that's how little I see it happening.
Second part, you mentioned Devin Amoo-Mensah. Justin believes he's been a very quiet MVP for this team. Who has surprised you on the team so far this year? I have somebody who's not surprised because I didn't have the background, but I am pleasant with the growth of Michael Bryant. I'm very happy with the Mustache Mafia.
Me, Rhys Williams. The reason why Rhys is Devin Amoo-Mensah was a known commodity. We knew him from the Stars. We knew that he was talented. We also knew that he was...
We just didn't like the Stars, right?
Not even him. I liked him. I liked Tatenda. My thing with him is I always saw him as someone who's uber aggressive, really prone to picking up really dumb fouls. And I've realized he picked up really dumb fouls because they only had one defender on that roster, and it was him. So he had to try extra hard. Michael Bryant, it's a good pick. Michael Bryant, to me, was a known commodity. I knew about Michael Bryant when he played for California United Strikers. I just thought he was a center back more so than a midfielder. He's been playing well. To me, the biggest player who's just surprised me entirely is Rhys Williams. And the reason why I've said a few times is, save for knowing that he assisted on the goal for Stumptown to beat Detroit during NISA last year, I don't remember him at all. I have no memory of him playing for that roster. I've seen his name on a sheet of paper a few times, but I don't remember him playing literally any game at all for that club. So when I found out that he assisted on the goal that won, I was like, that's not surprising, but surprising because I was there and I don't remember that at all. I have no memory of it being him. Wow. But to see him come on and be the 14th best player in the league, mind blown. Like I expected Declan to have a higher season than he would so far, and Declan's had a pretty good season. But Rhys is like top 5, top 10 in every category for that he needs to be in. And that's wild. It's just because I don't remember him at all in NISA. So for him to come on like this is amazing. And Detroit definitely benefits from him being on the wing.
All right, many people had different versions of this one, so I just kind of consolidated it. With such a small bench, where do we end up in the standings if we make no more signings?
If you're lucky, 7th or 8th.
Okay.
And that's just, and probably won't get any more signings. And obviously they might do better than 7th or 8th, but just for me, from just making assumptions.
So you don't think they'll finish in the top 4 without some more firepower?
No, because the season's about to get a little bit harder. And if players keep getting hurt on and off and you don't have like people to fill in for them, you're not going to get a 1-1 draw missing one of your top center backs against Louisville or against Memphis the second time or against Tampa Bay, or even when they go out to West Coast to play against Colorado. You're not going to get like we got a little tie, because you're going to get drilled. Like, you're going to get suplex through so many tables. They need those points too. So if there's blood in the water, you can maybe think about trying to drop a point to Hartford, maybe taking a bit longer to win that game than you need to, maybe dropping a point here or there against Miami. But against these other teams with you don't have the roster to back up where you're missing, you'll just get kicked in the teeth, and that'll just happen over and over and over again. I don't think that's going to happen often, but I do think some of these Detroit fans are in for a bit of a rude awakening against some of these other teams in the league. Not Louisville. We've seen how against Louisville how that's going to go. But some of these teams you're kind of looking over right now because they're higher in the standings. You catch them on a day where they're decently healthy and Matty Lewis is still hurt. Maybe Stephen Carroll has a little bit of an injury. Maybe one of our wing players is down. They're going to break your teeth.
Do you think we can stand up to them if everyone's healthy?
If everyone's healthy, most likely. If everyone's healthy, we have a few bodies on the bench. Definitely. I think you can beat them. At this point, if you asked me earlier in the season if I thought that, probably not, no. Right now, they're riding high. They have some confidence. Sure. You get Matty Lewis, get Brad back. Definitely have a lot more confidence in them beating a team like Tampa Bay or the Switchbacks or Louisville or Memphis.
All right, this next one I got varieties of, and I didn't want to focus on this because I just don't want it. I just don't want the show to be that, because I feel like this topic's been hit a ton of times. But I'll put it into one question. I will basically put it through John. We're doing great in the USL Championship. Why aren't we pushing harder to join MLS? And I'm leaving it to this one question. I'm sorry, listeners, but I had enough of these where I had to include it.
I'm really hoping I don't get yelled at for this.
Go ahead and get yelled at. Well, let's take the heat. Bring it.
Because Nicole might hear this, but that's kind of like asking me, like, you're doing really great with Nicole. Why don't you push for Angelina Jolie? Like, I don't have that. I don't have that. I don't have the money to do that. I don't have those things in my possession, so I can't do it. You literally just got to the USL Championship, and you're doing well. It's great, awesome. It's akin to walking in someone's house and being like, awesome, I just took my shoes off. When do I go to the next house? Like, no, you need to sit down, get comfortable, maybe have a nice little meal, hang out, watch some TV, maybe see what they're doing, have a little party or something. Then you try to go to the next house.
And make some good memories. Get some trophies.
You don't just show up like, hey, we're good. All right, bye. Like, that's rude. That's a rude thing to do. But also, to the first point, you don't have the money. You can't even fill out a full USL Championship roster. Like, you really think we should push now to go to the major leagues? No. The gulf between the finances needed for an MLS team and the finances for USL Championship team are so vast that, like, the best way to put it into numbers is when they played against the Columbus Crew, the reason why that people were so jazzed about the win, besides the fact it was a championship team beating a Major League Soccer team, there were like one or two players for the Crew whose contract for that year alone cost more than the entire, like, Detroit everything. Like, not just the players, but like the player's salary, coach's salary, probably a little bit of upkeep for Keyworth. Like, just all of that is less than one player for that club. So, like, that alone should let you say we're not there yet. Even if you beat that team like that, we are not there yet. We need to wait a few years, get there. Sure, if you're trying to push for the future, sure, but maybe finish more than a half of a year in your first year in the championship before you decide to try to push upwards. Because
I mean, even people who are all about promotion and relegation, I don't want to hear it until we've got some trophies in our pockets.
And theoretically, like, I'm not wishing this, knock on wood, but like, theoretically, you could lose every game from this point forward. And then what? Like, are you still pushing for Major League Soccer because you're not playing well anymore? So, like, maybe let's finish maybe half a year, not even a full year.
Like, are you a soccer fan, or is this about your own ego? You know what I mean?
Like, a full year would be better, but maybe finish half a year. Let's see how they're doing from there. Then we'll talk about maybe the next level. But, like, even then, it's still like you can't go anywhere because you don't have the money.
I mean, and that's setting aside all of the culture bits, right? We could do an entire episode on all the culture stuff. From a pure soccer standpoint, it makes no sense. I think we should be happy in USL Championship, at least for a while, if not longer, and embrace what we have here, because what we have here is great.
I mean, I would love for promotion and relegation to be a thing in the U.S., but I know for it to be a thing in the U.S., like, there has to be, like, some things put into place so that it can actually work properly. So, like, yeah, for you to be like, we're good here, let's move up, that'll be economically so many not great things are going to happen if you even try to do that after a year. So just love your club here and just, hold tight until they're ready to move.
I want pro rel. I will say that personally, but the business person in me says it's never going to happen, because the way that American sports works is an insulated monopoly, and counting on it happening, being Charlie Brown with the football pulled from you every time, thinking that that's going to happen, if it does, great. I will never bet on it.
I mean, I won't even say that many words. I'll say this before we move to the next one, is it's very easy how pro and rel could happen in the U.S. Like, I've seen many times in this sport and other sports, when they want stuff to be regulated, they fix it really quickly. And it's very easy why it won't happen. They just don't want to do that. And that's the end of it. Like, no matter any arguments people want to have online about how it could work here and there, it can work very easily. Very easily. They just don't want to do it, so it won't. So until then, I think you need to make sure you have all the capital before you decide you want to move up to the next echelon of soccer in this country. Also, Nicole, if you heard that, I love you. Angelina Jolie has nothing on you.
All right, finally, Bill, what is keeping the attendance at the women's game so much lower than the men's? What can the team do to improve women's matches attendance?
Sexism. First answer, sexism. Period. That's it. That's literally it. And if you need me to elaborate, I'll happily do so. I won't name people because I don't want to shame people like that online, but I will do it, I guess, if I see them in person. There are many people who are loud, very loud fans of Detroit City FC, and this is within like their own fan group. I'm not talking about like some guy in like Austria. I'm talking about people who are like actually here, who go to games, who like are happy and energetic and supportive. Many, many loud fans who are eerily silent when it comes time for the women's game, who are very much like, I've seen people comment like, stop talking about the women's team and talk about DCFC. And it's like literally the same thing. The men, the women, the boys, the girls, the toddlers, they're all Detroit City FC. So like you can specify which team you want to talk about, but like saying the women's team is not DC, that's already a part of the problem right there and in there. You have people within your fan group who are like, that's not Detroit City, that's Detroit City women's team. They're all the same bubble. Like they're all the same umbrella. They're all the same shield that you very much rep. So before we even go outside of like that, it's internalized like it's women's soccer. I don't have to care about it because it's not the men. It's not whatever. And like it's sad. It's very, very
but
sad.
Also very prevalent in America. I mean, you just look at the numbers. It's like the WNBA draws what, 15% of the NBA, if that, on average. I looked it up.
I'm not saying that's right, but I will say I understand the financial repercussions of that because people can say the men's game draws X amount and the women's game doesn't because they can't dunk or whatever excuse they want to have. That's their own thing. I think it's silly nonetheless. But with DCFC, it's a little bit startling to me that the numbers between the men's and women's games just tail off the way they do because the fans are so passionate about them that are there. But, and not that the players appreciate any sort of support. Like they could be 100 people, but it's definitely more than 100. And just people cheering and chanting for them, they love that. I know they do. It's why back in the NPSL days for the men, you'd get so many players from all around the country wanting to come here and play because they just wanted to be in front of a crowd that treats them like that for a summer game. And the women are no different. They're like, hey, I could play for this one club up here that, you know, is pretty good, but only our parents watch, or I could go to this club down in Hamtramck where we draw about 3,000, 4,000 people who chant my name who I don't even know at all. I could, you know, it's a very easy pick if that's something you care about. But yeah, the main answer for that one, sexism. It's just people don't want to have to care about women's sports. They don't have to.
True facts. Between 25 and 50% of our audience skipped this segment.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know who, but I do know the aggregate numbers, and I can watch the dip off every time we talk about women's soccer. The only way to combat it from the team perspective, I mean, I want to give kudos to the team for doing everything they're doing. But, I mean, I think a pro team would help to some degree. You know, being pro, I think that does matter to some extent.
Yeah, I mean, if they were like, I'm not saying they're going to be the top level women's pro soccer like how they are now, but like if they get to be a professional level where they can compete, I guess, and draw some names that you might know, like maybe they don't get like the top tier like Tobin Heath. You don't might get a player like that, but you might get an up-and-coming player who got her first cap for the women's national team or someone, maybe the Canadian national team. You might get some players that people know, so you can say, oh, well, I'm watching this game right now, but there's also this person plays currently for the Japanese national team or someone who plays for this national team. And not to the women don't have players like that already. Like Mia Romero plays for Trinidad and Tobago's national team currently. But Trinidad and Tobago's national team is very different than, say, like Brazil's or Canada's or the US or even like Colombia. Like very much the skill level between the teams as a collective is a bit different. So to draw someone from one of those teams, someone you watch on TV, someone you might watch during the World Cup coming up, that's a very big thing, different than like, say, someone who you won't be watching on TV. So
that first one is the core problem, not the second part. There's something I have learned over the years that it's very difficult to sell people something that they're not already ready to buy. And the dark truth is that I think we're a sexist nation.
I mean, it's not really a think there.
We are.
There's plenty of problems that we can't get into right now because it'll just take too long. But there are plenty of problems going on in the country that very obviously would be fixed if it wasn't such a sexist notion behind it. But that's another episode for a day that I'm probably not on air. So, but yeah, it's the club is doing all they can do. The club is very much promoting them the same as they would the men, and it's just up to people to actually. I think if I were being cheeky for the club, I'd probably spend 1-2 weeks where I just don't promote the men at all, just promote only the women and see what people say. That'd be if I was running a club, and you see, if I was running a club, like it would be a little bit nuttier than a regular club because I don't really have common sense sometimes.
We could be the Las Vegas Lights of the East.
Yeah, I mean, they're currently having a $1 juice promotion where they have Jose Canseco hit softballs into the stands that he autographed. And, I love that. But, like, if I ran a team, it'd be like, let's have a guy who wants to be Evil Knievel jump over the entire stadium and hope he doesn't die during our halftime show or else the game will be postponed. So, like, yeah, I don't really have common sense to do that, but, like, I would definitely say maybe for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe even a month if you could stand it. We don't promote the men's stuff. Like, unless it's a game, where it's like
game day, that's it.
It's like it's ESPN, so like they're paying us to we have to say something. We'll say something really brief and like whatever. Kind of like what when Phoenix had to promote like Detroit City having their game on ESPN Plus, they made a little like joke like TikTok, like, okay, we're doing it because we have to do it. Sure, I would do that maybe. But like maybe I'd spend more time hyper focusing on the women more so and less on the men. Just to be like, we have a team here too.
Which sends a message to the fan base.
But, like, in terms of just being, like, regular, normal team, DCFC is they're doing the best they can. They're doing the best they can to make sure people understand they have a women's team, making sure that they get the same coverage as the men. And it's just up to people to, like, decide that they actually care. And as you said, it's very hard to sell something to somebody if they don't actually already want to buy it.
Well, Fletcher Sharpe, this was quite the episode. We went deep.
I'm hoping I don't get my mentions filled with very much soy boy liberal comments. But, if I do, then it means it resonated with somebody. So I guess I can live with that.
Well, every time I get a soy boy, I just reply, my favorite substitute is oat milk.
It's not bad.
All right. Well, with that, I'm Jer Stays.
And I'm Fletcher Sharpe.
Remember to support us, patreon.com/Daily Detroit. It is you who keeps this show on the air. Remember that you are somebody, and I'll see you around Detroit.